Welcome back, guys. We are talking prize picks for week 9. My name is Ethan Sauers. I am a DFS analyst here at Campus to Canton. And I'm going to go over my top 5 plays this week for the Saturday slate of college football action on prize picks. So let's jump in. The first one that I'm looking at this week is going to be CJ Donaldson. He is projected here for 54.5 rushing yards. And I'm leaning more, mainly because we've got him facing Central Florida this week, UCF. UCF's allowed 196 rushing yards per game on average. The only teams to hold Donaldson under this 54.5 mark were Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Both of those defenses considerably better against the run on an average per game basis than UCF. So really like Donaldson here. He's been one of the more consistent players in college football fantasy this year, usually coming in with a touchdown and over 50 yards per game. The only game he doesn't have a touchdown in has been Duquesne in week 2, and they didn't really need him then. So I really like this spot for Donaldson here at 54.5, going over the rushing yard there. Second one that I like is Devon Neal. He's coming in at 77.5 rushing yards, so a little bit higher than CJ Donaldson here. He was held under this mark only twice in his season so far. Texas and Oklahoma State held him under. This game does feel like a similar matchup to those, so I get a little bit of trepidation. That being said, Oklahoma, there's some rumblings coming out of Norman that they are not the healthiest that they've been. They are dealing with some sickness, some illness in the locker room. So I do think that Devon Neal could have a slight advantage here, particularly with conditioning. Guys playing sick, they can definitely still show up and be active and be ready to go on Saturday. But I think conditioning is a big thing that starts to come into play when you're dealing with illness and fatigue and things like that. So Devon Neal with the 77.5, he doesn't need to have that kind of a mismatch to go over. He is an electric player who comes up big in big spots. So I really do think if there's any weakness on that Oklahoma defense with this illness and with them dealing with getting healthy, I do think that Devon Neal can exploit that and do well. Mitchell Evans, tight end for Notre Dame. They're going up against Pitt this week. I have him for less than the 4 receptions he's projected for here. So Evans was allowed over the 4 reception mark against Ohio State and Duke so far this year. That suggests to me that they are targeting Evans in games that are closer, in games that are a little bit more competitive. Notre Dame is 20-point favorites this week against Pitt. I don't think they're going to be challenged too much. I did mention on Campus to Caching this week that I do think that Narduzzi is going to try and make Sam Hartman win this game through the air and try and really lock down Estime. But that being said, Mitchell Evans is going to have more competition this week as both Jaden Thomas and Jaden Greathouse return to the lineup from injury. And this is already not a super high volume passing attack. So any targets that are being directed elsewhere or vacated for Evans, that really does hurt. I do wish that this was at 4.5, something that didn't have the ability to push. But that being said, he's only gone over this line in 2 games so far this season. He has hit 4 receptions exactly twice, but a push does not kill your ticket in prize picks. It just voids that extra line there essentially. So I'm okay with rolling him out at the 4 reception mark there. We've got Dylan Gabriel as the next one. I'm saying more than 2.5 passing, rushing, and receiving touchdowns. So really any touchdown that he scores is going to count towards this one. Gabriel has only been lower than this in 2 of his 7 games this season. He's hurt us before, but as Michael Scott once said, I am ready to get hurt again. Dylan Gabriel is an electric player. Oklahoma has a team total of 37 points in this one. That projects them for 5 touchdowns. That means they could feasibly run for 2 or, throw with a different quarterback for 2 touchdowns, and Gabriel still would be projected to pass this and hit with 3 total touchdowns. There is a little bit of concern, if we go back to what I said earlier about them dealing with some illness and some sickness. But if Gabriel's good to go, I haven't heard anything specifically regarding Gabriel. If he is good to go, I have very little concern that he can hit this, especially if they have to play a little bit of hero ball against Kansas, if this is a more competitive game than they expected. And the final, the 5th line that I like here, Haynes King, quarterback for Georgia Tech. They play North Carolina on Saturday night. His line's at 1.5 passing touchdowns, and this caught me a little off guard because he started off the season so hot. That being said, the last 2 games, he faced Miami and Boston College and only threw for 1 touchdown in both of those games. Now, Miami has a good defense, so I'm not really considering that as a, he should have performed better. I'm sure Georgia Tech fans would have loved for him to play better, but that was a tough matchup for him. And Boston College, they can show up on defense. They gave Jordan Travis fits earlier in the season. So I have a hard time holding Haynes King, holding that against Haynes King too much. That being said, he probably should have performed a little bit better against the Eagles. But he's got North Carolina this week. North Carolina's defense has allowed 1 touchdown per game through the air on average. And so you hear that and you're a little bit scared off by the matchup. But when you actually dig into the numbers and you see the offenses that they've faced, so they've allowed, or they had 0 passing touchdowns allowed for South Carolina, Minnesota, Pitt, and Syracuse this year. So no touchdowns through the air, but those quarterbacks aren't really known for lighting you up through the air. And with the exception of South Carolina, maybe, Haynes King is a better quarterback than all 4 of those quarterbacks that they face. I'm really not too concerned about it. It really seems like it's the product of, one, not facing great passing quarterbacks so far this season outside of the games where they did get lit up, like Miami. App State even threw for some touchdowns on them. So I'm not too concerned about that. North Carolina, their defense does give up more rushing touchdowns, and that rush funnel might be a little bit of an extra reason why they've been so stout on paper. But Haynes King, this feels like a really good get-right spot. North Carolina should be able to put up points. I think Georgia Tech's going to have to throw to stay in this game. I really like this opportunity for Haynes King to get back on track this year after such a great start and then that hiccup here in the middle of the season. But I will go back here, recap these 5. So I've got CJ Donaldson, more than 54.5 rushing yards. I've got Devon Neal, more than 77.5 rushing yards. Mitchell Evans, less than 4 receptions. Dylan Gabriel, more than 2.5 total touchdowns. And Haynes King, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's what I like this week. If you guys have any questions or you want to talk about these picks, feel free to tag me in the Discord. Let me know what your thoughts are. I love talking shop. If there are any, comments, concerns about any guys that are playing, if you want my input, I'm more than happy to jump in and talk about it. Other than that, feel free to mess around with the board this week. There are some good options for Saturday. It seems like there's a little bit more available to play that I felt okay with this week than some of the more recent weeks. So feel free to get funky with those Prize Picks lineups this week. But enjoy the games and be responsible out there. But have a great weekend, guys.